You can't go with like a closed mind and a closed heart. You really have to go and embrace everything and everybody that's around you.
Welcome back to another episode of Voices of the Goddess, where brilliant women come to take a break from their successful and sometimes overwhelming lives to level up, live free, and create abundance.
If your hectic life has you feeling a bit lost, if you're building your career, brand, or business, or if you simply want to get the most out of life, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Julietta Wenzel, founder of Body and Soul PT and Soul Candy.
And I'm your co-host, Graciela Laurent, professional portrait photographer specializing in boudoir and personal branding.
Whether you're relaxing with a cup of coffee or running around town, we've got you.
Whatever you're doing, thanks for bringing us along and sharing a laugh.
Here comes the magic.
Another episode of us. How you doing?
I'm all right. Everything is okay.
You're always like such the calm one. I'm always like the such hyper one. I love you. You're my, I don't know. I can never remember which one's the yin yang and all that, but I don't know. But you're my match, woman. You're my match. I love you.
We create balance together.
Well, I have a funny story to tell you. Well, it's kind of funny, kind of sad, but sad in a funny kind of way. The other day I'm, driving in the car with the kids, where all the good conversations happen. And my son, who, my kids are almost 14. I've been driving them to some sort of school or another since they were 2, right? So those 20 minutes of drive time, that's our chat time. And so this is where the life lessons come up, right? Parents, pay attention. The time in the car, that's when you get to talk to them. So my son the other day says, "Mom, what's the heaviest thing in the world?" And I don't know what mood I was in, but the first word that shot out of my mouth was regret. And as soon as it came out, I was like, oh my God, I'm so right. Like, it might be a little heavy for a 13-year-old, but I'm like, it's that, what is it? The Mark Twain quote about like, you only regret the things you did not do, et cetera, right? Yeah. So then this morning, I'm scrolling through social media and I saw, and I can't tell you how much this pains me, that Phantom of the Opera in New York closed its doors. Like, the chandelier came down for the last time. It's closed. It's over. And it ran for 35 years, right? So I'm 49. It came out when I was 14. I have seen local productions here in South Florida numerous times. Like, I don't even know how many, right? I've seen a ton of different productions, but I never got to go to the one in New York. And when I tell you that, like, my voice is going to crack because I am so sad that I never got to see the one like in the actual theater made for it, like on Broadway. And I kept on thinking like, next year, any minute, now I'm following my career. Now I'm having a kid. Now I'm this, now I'm that. Right. And so I don't know how, honest to God, but 35 fucking years have passed. And now it's closed. And I'm like, and why, social media gurus? I hope Siri is listening and Mark Zuckerberg is listening. But like, can you tell me that this is coming like a year ago? Like, why am I getting the news that it's over? You should have told me a year ago, like, hey, Graciela, get your shit together. We've been out for 35 years and it's about to close. So you better hurry up. You know what I mean? So anyway, I cannot even tell you how sad I am today about that.
And it's a lesson so that next time you don't wait.
Oh, for sure. The problem is that whenever things like this happen to me, I become completely unbearable because now I'm going to like eat life alive for the next 6 months until I exhaust myself because I'm like, no, I have to say yes to that because if I don't say yes to it right now, then it's never going to happen. Right. And then my partner, he's like this super chill guy who's like, we've got time. Don't worry. Everything is fine. And you know what? Like, I need that balance in my life and I need a fire buddy. I need somebody to be like, you know what? Let's go. Let's do it right now. Like haul ass because 35 years went by in a second. I'm telling you, like, I remember the first time I saw Phantom and I said to myself, I can't wait. I'm going to go to New York and see it there. Okay. Well, 35 years. Anyway, so I know New York was shut down for a while with the pandemic and everything. Presuming everything's back up and open, maybe our next guest can tell us how things are looking up there because I have not been in years. And now, of course, I'm like, what am I missing now? What am I missing?
Yeah, New York is hard for me because my first and only trip to New York was when I learned that my mom was in the beginning stages of dementia. And I'm so happy and feel so blessed that she and I had that weekend together in New York, and we went and saw Wicked, we went and saw Hairspray. You know, we did all the things, and you know, but it's so bittersweet because we had these wonderful moments together, but also I was just so sad the whole time because it was just so obvious what was happening. And so I haven't been back, and I know I need to go back just for the therapy of it. I did have to, and maybe we talked about this on a podcast that was closer. I had to travel through New York to go home for my niece's wedding, and I had a whole emotional breakdown, and I was like, what the hell is this? And I couldn't figure it out until all of a sudden I realized, like, oh, I'm going back, because it was literally in the airport where I found, like, I was on the phone with my dad. I can't find my mom. Was her flight late? What was, like, I can't find her. What's going on? And that's when he told me, and I was just like, fuck. And so yeah.
So maybe it's time we create a few more memories to add on to all these memories, you know?
Yeah.
I feel a trip coming up.
Oh yeah. Bring your guest on?
Let's do it. Let's bring our New York guru on.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, darling.
Hello. It's so funny hearing you guys talk about New York, and I'm so jaded that I don't have that love that you guys have.
I mean, I gotta tell you, I've been to New York twice, and both times I was like, oh my gosh, this place is terrifying. It's too fast. It moves too much. The rats are too big. I gotta go. But like when I got into the pockets of what I was doing, I loved it. Like there was so much fun if I just focused on what I wanted to do. Right. But you live there.
Yeah. I mean, born and raised, you know, it's kind of one of those things where I like to look at New York in the eyes of people who don't necessarily go there very often, or who are tourists, right? And because you have this non-jaded way of looking at things where everything for me is like, oh, I don't want to go. If I can't walk there, I don't want to be there. That sort of thing. You know, I have my favorite restaurants, or people are like, oh, I went to this fabulous restaurant on the Upper East Side. I'm like, I don't care. It's not where I go, you know? And so I take advantage of that quite a bit, whereas maybe I should look at it in your eyes and say, oh, well, maybe I can explore something different, you know?
Well, based on my phantom story, I will tell you to look for the oldest thing in New York that you haven't seen yet and hurry up and go see it, because apparently everything goes away.
It does. You know, it's funny. I heard you talk about a Mark Twain quote, and one of my favorite quotes is one that's very similar to that, but Abraham Lincoln said it, and he said, never regret the things you've done, only things you failed to try. And I kind of live by that quote because it's the truth.
That's right. That's right. I love that. So can you give our audience the benefit of your introduction, who you are, what you do, and what keeps you passionate about what you do? Because what you do is not for the faint of heart.
Thank you so much. So I'm Kim Sarni. I'm the managing director for South Florida Business and Wealth and Lifestyle Media. I've been in publishing for 25 years, and it's kind of one of those things where I fell into publishing. It wasn't something that I wanted to do growing up. It wasn't something I went to school for. It was one of those, my mentor actually, and I'll just give you a brief story because I think it's funny, and he's still my mentor today. So 25 years ago, I was working at AOL, and our particular group actually founded the internet. So I worked for Mozilla, and the senior vice president there, his name is Phil, and keep in mind, he's still my mentor today. He came to me, I was his executive assistant for 2.5 years. And he said, Kim, I have to be honest, you are the worst assistant I've ever had. And I looked at him and I said, I do not disagree. I do not disagree. I know I'm terrible. And he goes, but I want to embrace all the things you're really good at. Like you're really good at talking to people and forming relationships and sales. And so I want to put you into like our sales group. And that's kind of was my foray into publishing and advertising.
Wow. That's adorable. That is
so
hysterical.
Instead of him looking at all the negative things and like being like, you're fired, he's like, no, you're actually good at some things. So let me just give you a chance.
Well, it's still your specialty because I see you all over town. You are absolutely the busiest woman in Fort Lauderdale. I don't know how you do it. I don't even have to go to events anymore because I just watch your social media feed and I feel fulfilled. I'm like, that was a fun event. I'm so glad I went. But you get to do really amazing things and showcase a lot of businesses and a lot of really cool people. And you've been in South Florida now, like what, 3 years or something? Not even?
It's under 2 years.
Under 2.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I mean, funny thing is when I moved here, I lived at the Riverside Hotel for 6 months when I moved here.
Wow.
And I didn't even have a house, so I was just kind of like Eloise at the plaza, like living my best life in a hotel. And I finally said, maybe I should get a condo. I think they're tired of me already.
I might stay a while.
Yeah. But I had never been to Fort Lauderdale before, much less Broward County. So, I've been to Miami 100 times for girls' weekends or whatnot. And when I stepped foot into Fort Lauderdale, I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm like 44 years old. Like, why am I moving cross country or not cross, why am I moving? Yeah. And, but it's been a heck of a ride. So I'm grateful for every moment.
It's cool. One thing we talk about a lot on the show is limiting beliefs and how they hold us back. What limiting beliefs did you have to let go of to get to where you are today?
Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. Shut it.
Perfect.
It's like, I'm like, my door is shut.
Ask that one again, Juliet. Ask it again.
I'm sorry.
We'll decide whether to leave that in the final episode or not, because that was wonderful.
That was real life.
We always keep it real here.
Yeah.
Well, the question was,
can you say it again? I'm sorry.
What limiting belief did you need to let go of to get to where you are today?
I think, everybody has insecurities. I especially have insecurities. Am I good enough for this? Am I saying the right things? Am I aligning myself with the right people? Am I even the best person for this job? And when I moved here, I was at my previous job for 4 years. I mean, I was killing it there. Just had a great time, huge bonuses, and to be able to like say, oh, I'm just going to leave and move to a whole nother state, a whole nother city I'd never even stepped foot in. I had to really believe that there was something more there for me. And I had to, and keep in mind, my husband is still in New York. My kids are in college in upstate New York. My animals are still in New York. So I was literally leaving all of that and saying, okay, well, I'm just going to do this. And, whatever happens, happens. And so I really had to get over the fact that 1, I was doing that. And 2, it was going to be okay. And it's been great. So, I mean, I think it's just that matter of belief, right? You really have to take a look at what you're doing and why you're doing it and say, this is for the best.
Yeah. And make it so, right? Because had you moved down here and said, this is terrible, it's a failure, and thrown yourself onto the bed, right? Like it would have been a failure, right? But you took the bull by the horns and you're out there doing your thing, and it has paid off in spades. I mean, I don't know about your personal success, but you certainly have guaranteed lots of other people's success. And like to us, that's, to me, that's one of the, I don't know, the biggest things you can do with your life is to make other people's lives better, and how cool that you have a job that does that,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Well, it's important. I mean, I know social media, it's all fun and games, it's all drinks here and awards there. But at the end of the day, that's what you're doing, right? Is that you're impacting how someone else lives their life, I mean, that's our goal.
I agree. I think, social media is one of those weird things where, it's everybody is living their best life on social media. They don't really see the kind of the ins and outs and the things that we might struggle with. And I mean, I struggle all the time. And it's more like, oh my gosh, like, am I doing the right thing by my company? Am I doing the right thing by me? Am I doing the right thing by my friends? What about my colleagues? Or am I setting the right example? Like, should I be out at 4:00 in the morning at this bar? That sort of thing. So I think limits are what you make them, right? You should have no limits to what you want to do.
Yeah. One of the things that we always talk about is having a library of really good books. And I don't know. Well, you quoted Abraham Lincoln, so that was pretty lofty. That was pretty impressive. Are you a big reader? And if so, do you have a book that you'd like to recommend for our audience?
I do. I'm a big reader, but if I read as many like self-help books as I do crime novels, then I think I'd be rich and famous. I am a terrible, like, I have like this whole library in the back of me, and I've read them and none of it sticks in my head. But if you were to say, hey, Kim, I need you to tell me what your favorite book by James Patterson is, I'm like, I could talk to you about it for an hour, right? It should be a movie. I know who's going to play in it. Like, I'm there.
I love that. I've never met anyone that's like really into it. Like, that's so funny. Have you been doing that a long time? Like reading that
my
stuff?
whole life. Like,
Really?
I watch all the crime. I'm also married a detective with the NYPD. He just
Right.
retired. He was on the NYPD for 27 years. So like crime is like my life, right? It's like, I want to hear every horror story. I want to talk about the blood. But I read a lot. And I think what I do is I read a lot of articles when it comes to self-preservation and self-worth. And so, you're talking about a book, and I am reading. I'm trying really hard. I have a hard time reading books that don't have like crime involved in it. But I did find a book, and it's really interesting. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's called The Magnolia Palace. And it's really interesting because it's based off a family in New York City that all of a sudden she lives in this home. She gets kicked out of this home, but it turns out there was a murder in this home at some point. So it's a really coming of age story, but then it ties into this murder. So it's got me hooked on there just because there's that crime aspect to it.
I
But
love that.
what I do read is I read a lot of articles, and I was actually reading one this morning, and it's interesting. They were talking about regrets and about what we've done and what we can't change. And I'm reading this one article, and it's how to change the past without a time machine. And it's saying you are able to change the past, yes, but you shouldn't regret doing it. I think my favorite quote from this is, the present changes the past. Looking back, you do not find what you left behind. And Karen Desai said that. And I think that's the truth, right? So we look at our past, what we did yesterday. I can't change what I did yesterday, but everything I do tomorrow can affect what happened yesterday. And I think that that's really interesting and a positive way to look at things.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I think we change the past also by the meaning that we give to it.
Right.
Like in the moment, it might have one meaning, and then as time passes, it has a different meaning. And like when years and years go by, it has a different meaning. So
absolutely.
It does change.
Absolutely. I say, my kids are 20 and 21, and one of my sons is in the Air Force, and my other son is a junior in college. And I just saw them both this weekend, and we hadn't been together since January, like all of us together. And we are always talking about like things that they've done, like how are your grades? What are you doing to further your career in the military? And I always say, you guys got to grab the bulls by the horns. You have it good right now. You want to live that life, and you want to do what it takes necessary to get ahead. And don't think about what you did yesterday, but think about tomorrow and what you're doing today that's going to affect tomorrow.
Speaking of tomorrow, so lives are cyclical. They're always changing. And you've accomplished so much, but I'm sure that there is more inside of you. So what secret gift is inside of you that's percolating and they're waiting to come out? And what's stopping you from letting it out today?
I think, with work, it's one thing, right? I want our business to be successful. We've been around for 14 years, and I think that we are a very successful media platform. So we're a publishing house, we're an events platform, and we're a full service digital platform. But I think on another scale is for many of those years. And although as a company, we've supported 75 nonprofits, we've not done a very good job of doing that individually. And so what I'd like to see happen is the entire company giving back, and whether they're, participating in different charities. I know I do, and Graciela, I know you do a lot too. And you Brett Rose said it best. He says you have two hands, one to hold yourself up and the other to hold others. And I think that's one of those things where if it is cyclical in nature, it will happen. And I think in South Florida, we need to go ahead and embrace the nonprofit community and constantly give back in everything that we do. So that's my goal. I strive that. I ask the team to go ahead and participate. And whether you're building houses or digging holes or I don't know, whatever, give back. It's so important to do that.
And sometimes, you know, in the world of giving, right, like it can be a lot of different things, right? Like you might think, oh, I don't have time to dig, or I don't have money to give, or I don't have, but honestly, sometimes literally just sharing like information about different nonprofits. I can't tell you how many times I've sat somewhere and I heard, I went to like an AFP luncheon, and they're giving an award to a nonprofit that I had never heard of. And I'm like, how did I not know about this? I know there's a million out there. And honestly, even if we're just talking about it, even if we're just sharing the mission, like so many people out there are like, oh, had I known that that existed, XYZ, you know, like lives would have been different, you know?
Yeah.
It makes a big difference.
100%.
I want to ask you a question that is not on our current script, but it was such a good one from last season that I kind of miss it. What is one piece of advice given to you by a woman that you still use today? Like, what is something really impactful that a woman said to you?
Yeah, it would be my mom. You know, like most moms and daughters, you know, you had a contentious relationship growing up. I always thought that I knew everything, and I was the oldest of three. So, you know, of course, I got the worst out of all of my siblings. You know, but my mom, she always believed. And she said, no matter what you're doing right now, Kim, I will always believe in you and believe in what you are meant to be doing in your future. And it wasn't a piece of advice. It was really her telling me that you might be the shittiest person right now, but you will be better than this. And she believed in me when I didn't believe in me. And I think that says something, right? So if she was to be my hero, if I was to say that she is my hero, she believed when nobody else did. And that's all that mattered. And it still matters today. And, you know, it's funny, Julietta, you're talking about your mom, and I understand that. I understand how important that relationship is because you believed, she believed, and that's what you had together.
Yeah.
It's funny because I always, people will always ask me like, wow, how do you do so much? And why do you take so many risks? And, you know, I was at a law firm for 20 years and everyone, especially the women that had been there a really long time, were like, oh, are you sure you want to leave and do your own business? It's really scary out there. And I always said, you know, my mom came to this country at 15 years old with literally nothing. Her sister literally had to borrow a dime to put it in the phone. Remember the payphones? You know?
Oh, yeah.
To be able to have somebody come pick her up at the airport. And that belief that you can do anything you set your mind to really has carried me through, right? Because I've always felt that no matter what, I'm never alone, right?
Yeah.
Like, even if you feel like you're alone, it's just a story that you're telling yourself because you're not, because there are people, right? Like, that's one of the missions that Julietta and I have for this community, is to realize that there is a community and there are people, and there are plenty of people that care, you know, and your only responsibility is to get out there and say hello, you know, and that's right. How you build a community, right? Because sometimes it's hard to believe in yourself, but as an outsider, like, it's so easy, Kim, for me to believe in you. Like, I see you, I see all the things that you do, you know, and everybody's got their doubts. Like, that's part of the human condition, right? But sometimes you need your buddy to be like, snap out of it, man. Like, you're good, you can do this, you know? Yeah. Julietta does that for me all the time.
You know what I find is I found it so interesting, especially in the South Florida community. There's groups of women that really, truly support each other and empower each other. And you hear that word empower or authenticity all the time and blah, blah, blah. It's all just word salad. That's what I call it, right? But when you do find a group of women, they truly do want to support you and lift you up and say, hey, I'm here for you. What can I do for you? And it's not because they want something from you. It's because they truly believe in your value. And I appreciate it more than in New York. And maybe that's part of my jadedness, right? It's, I have a different edge being from New York. I don't trust anybody, but here I really trust people, and I will give everything I can for you, as long as I know you have good intentions and a good heart. So it's very different here.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
It is interesting to hear others' perspectives, because me coming from the Midwest, Florida seems harsh to me, but it's all relative.
That's right.
It's all relative.
That is right. It's weird. Our company was sold last year. Gary Press was our CEO for 12 years. And so the company that bought us is Babcock's Media, and they're based out of Ohio. And they have a very different outlook, and they don't even understand how we work over here. They're just like, you guys are crazy. It's like, we can't deal with Floridians. I was like, well, you must have a real hard time with a New Yorker. So I could see that, because they tell us all the time, you guys run a whole different ball game. Like so I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Even like when I visit my in-laws in Georgia, and everyone is just like, I see it as so slow. I'm like, why do they walk so slow? And then the light changes and they just wait a second. I'm like, that's a whole second. I could have been down the street already, So it takes like 3 days to detox and to slow down and be like, oh, you're right. It is nicer when I slow down. Because I'm not a slow down kind of person. Like, I got things to do. I got to go.
Yeah. Well, it's talking about lights changing. Whenever I'm on Las Olas, I don't think I've ever used like a crossing walk. I usually just cross the street, kind of like in New York. You just cross wherever, right? No cars are coming, you're good. And the other day I was going to the client meeting, and I was like, I'm pushing the button to figure out. And then I couldn't figure out how to, I'm 46 years old. You think I know how to cross the street with a button? I had no idea. So I walked into my client's meeting and I was like, I just had to use a crosswalk. I don't think I've ever done that in my life. Like,
I had to wait and breathe air for a minute.
I wasn't sure what I was doing.
I will tell you, for me, that was one of the gifts of the pandemic. The pandemic had the best and the worst of everything. And one of the things was forcing me to slow down. I sat in my backyard more than I have in the last 15 years during those. And I was only home like maybe 2 months, I think, before I went back to work. And I saw things that I didn't even know were in my backyard, like creatures living there. Like I heard birds, I walk out one day and my son is having a whistling conversation with a bird. The bird sings and my son whistles back. And I'm like, I didn't even know that was like a thing. Like, just, because we are going so fast. Right. Julietta is always fond of, I tell her like, oh my God, today I experienced something. And she's like, I live like that all the time. What are you talking about? Like, pay attention. The world is happening. Like flowers smell, bees buzz,
It was interesting. We were home for a year and a half. So we had a harsh lockdown, right? And one of the things is my kids graduated high school that year. So in 2020, right? It's supposed to be a big year. It's real fun. And we had a big trip planned to Japan for them for graduation. And, obviously we couldn't go. And so I said, I got to get out of this state. Like I really had to leave. And so we rented this huge Escalade, and my niece flew down, and we actually did a stateside trip where we went from, we went to Gettysburg, because I'm a history buff. So I recited like the Gettysburg Address, like in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And then we drove up to my brother's in Pittsburgh. Then we went to across to upstate New York to like Lake Chautauqua, and we stayed there for 5 days and rented pontoon boats. And those are things we never would have done, because I'm so insisting on leaving the country that we actually did something stateside. And it was a magical 2 weeks. It really was. We connected with the kids, and there was nobody else around. Yeah. So it was not only very inexpensive, right? But it was so like incredibly amazing just to be together and to do things we wouldn't have done. So there's almost some silver lining in that entire mess.
For sure.
All right. Well, it's almost time for us to wrap up. But what
oh my gosh.
Like to know, I know, time flies when you're having fun.
Wow.
But what's a parting gift that you would like to share with our audience?
I think my parting gift would be is, everything you do it with open arms, right? And it's weird because I always feel like I have this little devil New Yorker on my shoulder where it's like, I go back to New York and I just like want to like, rawr. And then I have this little angel Floridian on my other shoulder that's like, no, Kim, help that person. and it's only in New York that they fight with each other. When I'm in Florida, I want to help. And I think my parting gift would be, go into things with open arms, right? You can't go with like a closed mind and a closed heart. You really have to go and embrace everything and everybody that's around you. I've not encountered one person that's been mean to me intentionally, and I never would. I wouldn't allow that. So if you just go in with open arms and an open heart, things will open up for you.
That's beautiful. You're the best.
You're the best.
I've loved having you on, Kim. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, for giving us this time, and to whoever you kicked out of your office. Sorry about that.
Thank you, ladies. I truly appreciate it. They're doing it again. I truly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.
All right, honey. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today and keeping us in the top 10% of podcasts in the world.
Ask us how you can promote your business on this podcast as a sponsor, and make sure you check out the show notes for details on how to get in touch with Julieta, Graciela, or today's special guest.
We're sending you lots of love and gratitude. Have a magical day.